Alright everybody, welcome to Combine STS Optimization. Today we're going to go over a few things. It's going to talk a lot about settings, but we're going to try to explain a little more about why the settings are important and get into a little further. I mean, everybody knows, everybody gets told you're supposed to do a lot of settings. They don't really get told why those settings are so important. Sometimes there's a lot of questions about that. My name's Tim Ellsworth. I'm shop foreman for the Missouri Valley store. Travis Mullinger's technician for Manning, and Jeremy Lapardis is sales for Manning. We'll be going over it with you today. Like I said, we're going to go over settings, go over some things you can do you might not think of to help change a grain tank sample that sometimes isn't coming out as clean as you want it to. And we're going to go through our understanding exactly where our grain loss is coming from and why it's doing what it's doing. And then finally we'll go through our grain loss monitor. Some of you guys might use it, some guys don't. It seems to be a little bit of a toss-up on the guys that use it and don't. But we'll show you the right way to go through the right way to calibrate them out so that you're getting the readings that you should be getting. We'll start out at the feeder house and we'll work our way back through the machine. One of the big things I get through the shop a lot is the feeder house drive belt, which is it's adjusting your header speed with the way it's set up. A lot of guys try to adjust it with that top idler, and the way they actually want it set, and it needs to be checked about every 100 hours, is you want to take that idler down and take all that tension off, and you should adjust your variable pulley on the back until you've got about an 1/8 inch gap between those reverser shifts, and then slide that pulley up and put about an inch past when it touches and start there for your speed so you can get that 520 low speed for your platforms. If you use just the idler and your settings are too loose down on that bottom, it's going to let it slip when you get into a little tougher stems and stuff. You're going to end up tearing up belts and slugging the machine. You get it set too tight, you're not getting down to your slow speed, and then you'll start seeing head chatter, and you're just running a platform too fast. It's going to tear up your platform. The feeder house conveyor chain, I get a lot of them that are set too tight because that center rail is always going to sag a lot more from all the crop pushing against it over time. They want that set up, can't see it real well, but they want that set up when you open that middle door on the top of the feeder house. That conveyor chain should just be touching at the center of that door. You get them set up too tight to where that center's up, and you're losing a lot of your float out of your drum. You're putting a lot of excess pressure on that back shaft and tearing up bearings and a lot of excess shaft wear. If you're set too loose, you're going to get to where you're starting to jump sprockets. It creates more downtime and it'll start slugging the machine out. On the feeder house up front on your drum, they want that up for corn on that lever and down for beans so that you're getting the right float for the amount of the weight of the material and the mass of the material coming through. Your feeder house, if it's not feeding right, the rest of your machine's not going to feed right, and you'll see it all the way through. The sprocket down on the side here, the book's telling us to have you change that between beans and corn. I know most guys don't, and I got called out on it yesterday that a lot of guys don't change it. The new books that are out are saying now that if you're in really dry crop, to keep it slowed down for your corn so that you don't have that feed problem with it. So it seems from talking to you guys and stuff that we're seeing a lot more where most of the guys around here, they're not moving that chain. Your operator's manual is going to tell you to, and it's just going to depend on your crop conditions where you want to be. But if you're having a feed problem with that front, you might try moving that sprocket. It may make a big difference for you.
The slow speed is a small puck on the right side of the unit.
Yes, sir. Feed accelerator, they're wanting that sped up for corn, and actually I correct myself on that, they're wanting it sped up for beans. change that lever on the side, get your feed accelerator speeds up. If you don't have if you're not changing your speeds in between there, it's a big importance, because that feed accelerator is what's feeding the rotor. If you're not getting enough speed out of that feed accelerator to keep the vanes full on the rotor, you're going to get poor crop engagement the rest of the way back, and it's going to cause a lot of seed loss, and you're going to be wasting fuel. It makes a big difference in it. These rotors are designed, they run their best at capacity. They're wanting it pushing through. Slowing it down for corn, you've got so much more material, it's going to make a big difference in your feed for your rotor speeds. From there, I'll turn it over to Travis here. He'll start with the rotor and work his way back.
All right. And Tim was talking with the feed accelerator. Your whole goal with that feed accelerator is to get these 3 vanes full, and we want a consistent charge in each one, so we can keep a consistent mat density in there to get the proper threshing all the way through it. You know, with the crop going through it, we're actually spinning that crop through there at least 12 times through one of these bullet rotors. You can tell, here's all the vanes up top, and that's what's actually helping moving that crop through there, through the rotor. And we need 100% of the separation, or 100% of the threshing to happen in just that first 4 foot of the separator. And we want to achieve about 70% of the separation in that first bit too. There's only really about 30% of that final separation should ever take place back there by those separation times. And with the discharge beater, you got a small little chance to catch a little bit more coming out the rotor. But I want to be relying on that to help catch anything, because you want to get it all threshed out in front of the rotor, so you got all that extra time just to get that final separation done. And from there, we got 2 paths that the grain is going. It's either going to come down the shaker pan or already be in the shoe auger bed, or once it gets past the grates of the discharge beater, it's gone. I mean, we've lost all the chances we have to collect that grain. We're going to threshing clearance, and what we're looking for with our grain sample, we got quality and we got crop flow. That's going to be your throughput, how fast you can push that grain through it. So you go on the close end of the threshing clearance, we're running the damaged. You see those split beans, chipped kernels, start getting some docking, but also there, we get clean system overload. If you start grinding stuff up, you're going to be running a lot more material through the tailings, make the machine work harder, higher horsepower consumption, and we're getting a lot more wear on that rotor because we're running that material through there a couple times. But on the other hand, you go too far open, start running it unthreshed. You start seeing those ears with the kernels still on them yet, and that would add up to a lot of losses for you too. And this is going to be an important deal too. Stalling of crop matter. If you have these things too wide, too slow, you're have that grain just sitting in there tumbling on itself, and it won't be working its way out there, because you won't have the crop engagement of the threshing elements or the separating times, trying to help pull that thing back, or try pulling the crop mass back. Then from threshing clearances, rotor RPM, those two play a lot hand in hand. Same type of deal. You get too fast, you get damaged. You'll be hitting that grain so hard, once again, you'll be splitting beans, chipping those kernels up. You get it faster, it pulls it through. If you get the rotor faster and it pulls it through faster, you get lower horsepower requirements, use less fuel because it's not trying to work so hard to pull that crop flow through. But you can get heavy MOG, which stands for material other than grain. That's going to be all your tailings and form matter in the tank. But get the slow end of the rotor RPM, once you get unthreshed, get those pods that aren't quite broken open yet, and just get a lot of, you lose your rotor force, because we need a centrifugal force to throw that material and get the separator grates in there, because that's what's doing a lot of the separation too. And plus, you got that crop-to-crop contact, and that's what a rotor relies on a lot, is that crop-to-crop contact. And it's not all purely mechanical like what we have with these conventionals, and that goes back to from the header and the feeder house, keeping that rotor full, because that's how it's going to thresh the most efficient, is if you have that thing full all the time. Then we run into ground speed sometimes. You get some thin spots this year, or some spots down corn. You may have to slow down, speed up a lot. But what that's doing is if you're running slow, you might have to tighten that rotor up a little bit because you aren't going to have that material pack in there that we need. So if you drop your ground speed, maybe have to tighten up that rotor a little bit, or maybe slow it down a little bit too to keep that material in there just a little bit longer. Then as we get faster and faster, open it up, speed the rotor up to accommodate for all that extra material we got coming through. Then, believe it or not, we got 5 steps in our cleaning system on these. The first one actually starts with our shoe auger bed. What's happening there is when that grain falls in there, we got gravity helping us separate already. It's going to start working that grain to the bottom of the shoe auger bed and start working that trash to the top. So when it hits the pre-cleaner, we already have the grain on the bottom and it's not trying to fall through that trash, and just making our cleaning system a lot more efficient. And from there, second step, like I said, we have the pre-cleaner. Then we have our pre-cleaner extension fingers. And guys, if you see those gone, let's replace them because they are helping you. Then we got 2 more parts to our cleaning system, and that is adjustable parts. And that's just going to be our sieve and chaffer. And here it kind of shows a relation of how everything is stacked in the combine. Well, here we start with the pre-cleaner, chaffer. Then if you were to look underneath your pre-cleaner, you got those little stair steps, and all that that's doing is bringing it right up and dropping right in the front of the sieve. Because we want to get that to drop back as soon as we can, because if you start bringing it back too far, you can actually get tailings off of your sieve if you're running it too far back. It's not just all off your chaffer. Now when it comes to the sieve and chaffer, we've got some things we need to look at. Check the sieves. You want to calibrate them, but make sure they're clean. Pull those cobs out. Maybe if you've got some bent ones, straighten them up. So the reading in the cab is actually what's happening in the sieves, so we can adjust it more accurately. Sample loss issues. You don't have to rely on the cleaning system to help clean up our sample. It could be a header issue that's getting this foreign matter. So we need to stop and understand where we're getting the sample issues to help clean it up before we get to the cleaning system, because they are designed to run wide. If you start shutting them down too much, you can run into an air velocity problem, because the opening of the sieves is going to control a lot of velocity too. It's not just totally relying on the fan speed. Closing too far down, as I said, that's going to the velocity issue. Then tailings. We don't have to be running tailings all the time. Use that for if you're going through a spot where you're getting to really good corn. You know, it's okay, we'll run that tailings through to help catch all that, but we don't need to be relying on that to keep our sample clean. We should be running low tailings in normal conditions. Right here is just a good video, a good image of airflow. We're getting an air charge right off the top, hitting that pre-cleaner, helping lift that crop back. But the crop for the core matter that's getting blown up here, we need to be able to keep that velocity going to carry that out, so it's not falling back in on the back of the chaffer. And if it hits back of the chaffer, we can get more tailing. So it comes back a lot to maintaining that airflow across the whole cleaning shoe, just to help carry that material back. Hey guys, I got a little exercise here. Some crop sanding examples. Problems we're having. We got trash in the grain tank, high tailings, and chaff loss above 4.3 miles an hour. And what the operator has done is slow the rotor down and open the concave and close the sieves. But he could not improve the sample. But what's one thing he did wrong right away? Very good. We want to make one change at a time, because if you do 2 or 3 things, you don't know what happened. You don't know what fixed the problem. So we want to do one change at a time, so then we can get a fine tune to how we fix that problem. And here's the settings he had. But when he started, that's what his grain tank looked like. A lot of stems, a lot of cobs, not a very good grain tank. It docked at the elevator with that. What's the first thing you guys would do to correct that? Sieves? That's where a lot of us would start. But actually, how we corrected the stems on it, we first adjusted the deck plates in, then sped the head up. That was getting them the stalks pulled through more efficient. We didn't have all that extra stalks running through the concave. Cleaning system was able to work more efficient. We did that change, that's what we got. Totally got rid of the stalks. But we got all those cobs in. What would, it's perfect we're doing cob mix. What would we adjust now, guys? Open the rotor out. Okay. Actually, he went the wrong way with the concaves. We needed to close them down and speed that rotor up. We're getting the crop stalling in there. The crop was just kind of sawing in the rotor and it was just grinding itself up. We weren't getting that crop engagement to get it to try to pull itself through the machine. So I mean, it was kind of backwards kind of how we used to do it with the conventional. With these rotors now, we got to have that rotor speed and the concave clearance a little tighter just so we can keep the material flowing through the rotor efficiently. And when we did that, we got our capacity back and we got our ground speed back. We were able to go faster and still maintain that good grain tank sample. Okay, next we're going to Germany for grain loss.
Thanks, Travis. Jumping into grain loss, Tim started off with feeder health. Travis jumped in with rotors, achieving it, and then also went into achieving an acceptable grain tank sample. What we're going to go into next here is understanding grain loss. You know, there's two different types of grain loss when you're harvesting. You've got your header loss, and you've got your losses coming out of the combine. So when we are measuring on the ground for an acceptable grain loss, and everybody's got their own opinions how much they want to be dropping out of that combine, if they want to drop any. But you've got to also take into account your header loss, because there is going to be, depending on the conditions, and you know, we got people from all over the territory here. Conditions vary from all the way to the east, all the way to the west. Just because of the weather, conditions are just, some places just like they were last year in some places. So first you got to start with where it's coming from, either the header or the combine. Travis used this slide before. I wanted to jump in it and kind of use it the same thing. Is trying to understand, is looking at just almost a side cut of that combine, where you know, when Travis was talking about achieving acceptable grain tank sample, and just want to bring this up again because I really like this slide. Travis talked about zeroing out the combine, so we're talking about concaves, sieves, and chaffer. This is a perfect example of a brand new combine. Not very often do you know, when you look at the back of that chaffer bay, just like you look in this one, there's cobs. Somebody probably had the cob deflector down and shoved some cobs back in that chaffer, but when we're zeroing out the sieves and the chaffer, we got to get all of that debris out. We got to get all the cobs out. We got to get all the trash out of that. To get it set right, we've got to get that done. Factories.
What's the easiest way to do that?
What's that?
What's the easiest way to get all the cobs out of there?
Well,
use a long pair of needle nose pliers.
that's what I was just gonna say. Yeah. Reach up in there, or
And sometimes if you open them all the way up, you can get a lot of it to fall through.
that did help when we got this combine, because this thing still got its work clothes on. Is opened it all the way up, and majority of them actually fell out. There was just a few. If we would have had some needle nose pliers and probably a small piece of plywood, so we wouldn't have scraped ourselves up, we probably could have got most of them. So, but
But that's why it's so important to have that cob deflector down. And I run it down for every condition.
so you got this grab.
Just try, but for most of the time, they'll fall through just kind of like you say, you know, they're always going to have a few that stick. You got to get in there for some pop them out.
On the back, on the side.
jumping into to entering settings into the combine, two different ways. You can either use last year's settings, try to give that a shot, or most of you guys should have these with the combines. It's a starting point. It's not where you're going to end up. It's never where you ever end up, but it's just a place to start. So, just like I said, depending on your crop conditions, what you've seen last year, sometimes you may even have settings from previous years that you can use, but it's just a place to start. So this I do like using because it's not where you're going to end up, but it's a good place to start. So when we're going to start measuring grain loss, first thing we're going to do is we're going to raise this chopper up. We're going to measure the width of the chopper bag. So 95s through 98s, we're going to measure the width of the chopper bag. We're not going to leave that chopper down and measure the width of the head. We're actually measuring the width of the chopper. So when you look into here, the first place when you jump over it, when you flip this open, is it gives you what it's going to tell you is it's measuring it in a square foot. So 12 inches by 12 inches on a 6-row 30-inch head, 7 seeds in that square foot is 1 bushel of loss an acre. So just to give you a starting point, you can kind of decide there what's acceptable, what's not. But it's just to give you a starting point, give you an idea of what you're losing out the back of that combine. Also adjustments. Travis went through about changing, things you can do, ideas of ways you can go clean out grain tank samples. Also down in here, you've got flow charts of seed loss and setting and achieving an acceptable grain tank sample. So you've got. I do really like using this. This is a really good starting point, and I guess if it comes down to it, phone call doesn't hurt, but it's always a good tool to use. Jumping into grain tank or calibrating grain loss monitor.
Okay guys, we don't want to adjust or hit the calibrate button at all until we've done all these steps. You want to make sure you have the grain tank sample you want, you have the seed loss you want, because when you hit that button, no matter how you have it set, it's going to tell that combine, I'm okay with how this is running. But one thing we need to do is make sure we understand what that vision track is and what it's actually telling us. We have some guys, when I'm inspecting combines, they say don't worry about it. I don't ever look at it. But it's a very good tool to use. Starting out, it's going to show us our shoe losses, right and left. So if you got one side running heavier than the other, this will tell us if we're running anything out the back. Then this up here, a lot of guys don't really fully understand what that is. That is just volume going through the elevator. It's not different. It will not differentiate from seed to cobs to just leafy trash root. It's just reading mass running through it. Right here is our seed size selector. I see some guys run the middle to the larger ones. Pretty much for corn and beans, always keep that on the large seed setting, as that will give us the most accurate reading. And right here, it looks like a straw locker. That's still telling us our separator loss. That's telling us what's coming off the very last grate in that rotor. And by the time it gets to that, there's a good chance we're running seed, we're running grain out the back. We might want to stop and take a look to see what's going on. The last part of it, center column, total loss. That's taking these two together and giving you a single thing to look at to tell you your total loss. But in another good part of that bar graph there, if you can see right here, you got that little box midway up in the middle. When you have this all calibrated and you calibrate the vision track, those bars should be right in that box. That's where you want to run it. Because if you're going too high, that's saying you're running a little bit too, you got more losses than what you like, back that speed down. But on the other hand, if you're running below that bar, that combines run a little bit, it's not as full, you might be able to bump that ground speed up, and you want to just keep that thing running right in that bar, because then you know you're getting you're achieving acceptable grain loss that you guys want. Then moving on, go down to these buttons. That's a calibration button. And we're hitting that when we have the grain tank or when we have the combine full. We want to be going the speed that we want to combine. You don't want to go too fast or too slow when you hit that, because if you calibrate, if you hit the button when you're going slower than what you combine at, it's always going to be reading high, and you're going to think something's wrong. So that's why it's so important. It's average crop and the average speed you run at will give you the most accurate reading there. Then we go into the seat size selector. That's the button we're going to hit to move the dot there, and that's going to tell the seat size. Then last we have the arrows. If you hit the arrow once, it's going to generate a number up here. That's going to be your calibration number. And if you really want to fine tune it, you can toggle up and down, and you can fine tune that calibration number. And when we're talking about the sensors, there's the tailings. That's the tailings mass sensor, separator sensor, then a chaffer sensor. And when it comes to these guys, you want to take a look at them every now and then, make sure they're clean, especially this one here. You see a lot of husks, cobs build up on it. If that's plugged up, you're going to get an accurate reading. So we still could be running grain out if it's not able to read that, because they do read off of vibration. So we need to have that thing clean to get that accurate reading out. And here's a vision track. This is what you see going through the field sometimes. We're getting some high chaffer loss. And we're running a lot out the back. That's saying we need to stop, check our settings, check grain loss. And if it is acceptable, all that it will need is we'll need a calibration for that grain. And right here, this is an average. That's what you want to see. That's the way you know that combine's running at capacity, and it's doing exactly what you want it to do.
In closing, Tim started with the feeder house. Travis went into rotor and grain tank sample. Then we went into grain loss, and Travis ended up with calibrating the grain loss monitor. Right now, do we have any questions that we can try to answer? Crickets? I'm hungry too, so.
When you hit the calibration and it comes, does it kick out a number like 45 or 48?
It will be a bigger number, and sometimes it's into the thousands.
Okay, so if I go another 100 feet and I hit the button again, is it going to change the number?
It's going to change that number.
Okay. Or if you're not happy with it, you fine tune it.
Yeah, if you're not happy with where you're at, like you said, you can toggle.
If you want to be a little more
switches.
sensitive.
Right, it'll fine tune.
So does
that.
up or down be more sensitive?
That's a good question.
I guess you could find out, just
Yeah.
hit it and see if
I would say
bar
down would
changes.
be more sensitive because you're dropping that
I
caliber
think
down.
you're right, yeah.
Most guys I have don't manually adjust it, but it would be a good way to fine tune it.
Anything else? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
We do have handouts too.
Yep. We've got handouts. What we've got is we've got filter and belt handouts. So, you know, if you want, depending on if you've got a 50, 60, or 70, you ruin a belt, we've got a guide here to kind of help you decide. And there's also serial number breaks in there too, just because depending on the year and model of the combine, we've got, you ruin a belt, can't find the number. It's a quick and easy way to find the part number and even call to town before, instead of driving all the way to town to see if we even have the belt.
And it also shows all the belt routing so you get the belts on right. Some of those, they kind of twist around a lot of the clean grain out later.
So if you want, other than that, that's it.
In the filter guide, we've got all the filters, plus it has capacities. So, it'll tell you how much engine oil you need, it'll tell you fueling system, some of the gear cases, just some good reference sheets for you.